The new details for the UFO hearing that's going to be held in the House Oversight Committee have just dropped. It is happening next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern, and the focus is going to be implications on national security, public safety, and government transparency. So there's some super interesting details about this upcoming hearing. It will be public and unclassified, so it'll be live streamed as it's happening, and it's going to occur in the National Security, Border, and Foreign Affairs Subcommittee of the Oversight Committee within the House of Representatives. This hearing is also bipartisan in that there are going to be three representatives running point on this hearing. Rep. Luna from Florida, Republican, Rep. Moskowitz, also from Florida, Democrat, and Rep. Tim Burchett from Tennessee. The full witness list will be announced in a press conference tomorrow morning, hosted by Tim Burchett, but we do already know a few key details. There will be three witnesses at this hearing. One of those witnesses is already public, and we know it's this gentleman here, David Charles Grush. For anyone who didn't catch it, about a month and a half ago, Dave Grush first came out in a news article in The Debrief with journalists Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Keane, followed by a 1-hour on-camera interview on News Nation with Australian journalist Ross Coulthart. And in those interviews, he alleges that through his work, he discovered that there is a secret crash retrieval and reverse engineering program that is currently in possession of multiple spacecraft of non-human origin, as well as suggesting that there may also be biological material associated with those retrievals. He did make this interesting note that some of the craft are actually fully intact and some are only partially intact. Here's what makes Dave Grush such an interesting and truly unique whistleblower in this conversation. If you look at his background, he's a former combat veteran, flew in Afghanistan, but then went on to work at the National Geospatial Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. And while he was at that job, he was read into over 2,000 special access programs, as well as being in charge of gathering the information that was going to be put into the presidential daily brief and hand couriered it to the White House. So this isn't a guy you can't say wasn't sort of plugged in, but even more interestingly, in 2019, he took a role as an investigator on the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force. This task force was created by way of legislation because of what Navy pilots were beginning to come forward and say that they were seeing both in training ranges and in combat zones, which really came into the national consciousness after the December 2017 article, also by Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Keane, where they, for the first time, came public with those three videos that we've all seen and told the world that the US government has a UFO program that was stood up by, at the time, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. What's interesting about at the conclusion of his time on the UAP task force, where his job was to see, is there really a there to all of these stories and these allegations? He filed a whistleblower complaint with the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community, the ICIG. The Inspector General's job is to investigate claims of government wrongdoing and protect whistleblowers. And during that process, which went over the course of 2 years, Dave Grush provided evidence secondhand to the Inspector General. The Inspector General then conducted interviews with people who were inside the programs that Dave Grush is alleging. And at the conclusion of those interviews, the Inspector General deemed his claims credible and urgent, which triggers a process that requires the ICIG to provide the allegation and some of the substance behind it to the Director of National Intelligence, who's Avril Haines, as well as both intelligence committees in the House and the Senate. This is where we've started to see Marco Rubio, Chuck Schumer, and a few others begin to speak about the fact that they have been talking to multiple first-hand whistleblowers who are highly ranked, both current and former. And it seems to be the case when we get this announcement tomorrow that at least one of the two other witnesses alongside Dave Grush will be one of these first-hand witnesses. And this is all happening with the backdrop of what I covered in my last video, which is that the current Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, has put forth an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, the bill that's passed annually that funds the entirety of the U.S. military, outlining across 64 pages an extremely detailed plan for a UFO disclosure. Senator Chuck Schumer even references the Harry Reid connection in this tweet he put out from over the weekend. And what's so crazy is when senators are being asked about whether Chuck Schumer put this forth because of the allegations of David Grush, they all say his name never even came up. And this is coming from completely different sources. So there is a weird groundswell that's going on right now. I'll be sure to cover the other witnesses that are announced tomorrow. Be sure to like, share, and follow for more updates.